I'm in my basement in Montclair, New Jersey, and I have a really great group of panelists with me. I'm really thrilled with the guests we have today. We're going to have a broad and deep conversation all at once. We're going to try to get all of you involved. And I think we are actually also broadcasting this live on YouTube. So that's kind of cool too. And we'll also be sharing the video out later if you want to share it with friends who couldn't make it today. I have with me some old and new friends. First up, Jeremy Fingerman, who is the CEO of the Foundation for Jewish Camp, a job he's been doing for 10 years. And Jeremy and I go way, way back to when I was a teenage leader in USY. He was the big Maher, former international USY president. Of course, that was only a few years ago. But we've been great friends ever since. And he's also at his home in Fort Lee, New Jersey. We have also with us David Briffman of the Jewish Education Project. He's the CEO there. David and I just recently met, and he is running this incredible organization that really oversees, or is like an umbrella organization to educate and train and support all of our Jewish day schools, all of our after school community religious schools, and lots of other educational groups. And then we have Meredith Lewis from PJ Library. She's the director of content education and family experience there. And she says she's also the chief knower of families at PJ. PJ has hundreds of thousands, I believe, families to which it distributes Jewish books, Jewish themed books, and lots of other like engaging educational and fun content of how to use literature to build family relationships. And I'm really anxious to hear some of what she's been hearing from parents and kids about how they're navigating this. I'm also so excited to have with us Mayura Colton, who's calling in from Seattle, Washington, which was really ahead of most of the rest of us in the country in terms of experiencing the pandemic. And Mayura was one of the first kids, I think, in the country to confront the dilemma of what to do about her bat mitzvah. It was scheduled for March 14th. She was very excited to have a Parsha Ki Tisa that was connected to the news of the census. Neither her bat mitzvah nor the census are going off as expected, and she's going to share her experience of that. So we, as I said, we have a super diverse panel, and I know we have on the line, I think my own mom is on the line. My daughter, who is Mayura's age, said she was too busy with all she had to do because she has her virtual screenwriting class this afternoon, and she's behind on writing her film script or whatever. But I'm really glad to have all of you with us. Just if you're new to Zoom, I'm also new to Zoom. We're all kind of new to Zoom, but there should be a Q&A button somewhere, either on the bottom if you're on a laptop or on the left if you're on a phone or tablet. If you have a question, please put it in the Q&A and not in the general chat, because that's the easiest way for me to keep track of them. If you have a comment that you want to share with all the panelists or all the attendees, you're welcome to try to use the chat. And we may post some resources there, some links as we go and as we talk. So that's a lot of warm up from me. Sorry to go on and on. I'm going to start with you, Jeremy, because I think you may have the answer to the question on so many parents' minds. Will there be camp?
Well, we certainly hope so, but I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think any of us do, and we're in uncharted chartered territory right now. I would say that what's really interesting to me is that camp people are so nimble and they're so flexible and agile, and we need those skills more than ever, and their resiliency to be able to keep a number of balls up in the air. That's an important skill for any of us, but especially in today's world.
So I missed everything you said because you all froze for me, but I heard you say today something about camping will be made about whether camps will open. I'd love you to go into a little bit of detail about that. And then the other big question I have for you, I'm freezing. All right. I have great panelists and I know they're going to just pick up this conversation if I can't moderate it. But can you spell it out for us a little bit more, Jeremy, on just how the decisions will be made?
Okay.
If you didn't do that already.
So first of all, when you think about camp, It's not an all or nothing decision. The first overnight camps open on June 2nd. 3 camps open June 2nd. In the 2 weeks after that, I think it's another 30 camps open. And then 80 camps, or 80% of the overnight camps in our system, 134 camps open on June 23rd or later. And in fact, on June 30th, it's 2/3 of the camps, 67% of the camps will open. So a decision that somebody might need to make for June 2nd is not necessarily the decision you're going to make 3 weeks later, or even 4 weeks later, let's say in the Northeast. So it's something one to keep in mind. It's not an all or nothing. I think that camps are working hard to understand and to get clarity, and the American Camp Association is working on an operational manual of what are all the guidelines and procedures that you would need to do that fit what CDC would recommend and local state authorities as well. And camps are really good about following the protocols and procedures once they have them. And so we'll find out if we have new policies to put in. I think if they run, they're going to run, very, very safely. It'll be a good and successful summer if we can get them open.
And I think, and if not, so stick with you for just another second. If we cannot do the camp of our dreams and memories, for me, Camp Yavne in Northwood, New Hampshire, full summer, best time of my life. And my kids go to Eisner. My daughter was going to try 6 Points Arts this summer.
Wow.
If we can't have that immersive sleepaway camp that we want, there's going to be something, right? And you were talking even coming up for spring break, their camps are jumping into the breach,
well,
right?
It's amazing what this crisis has brought, and I know David's got some examples as well. But and I just think, just for a moment, before this Zoom call, I was on a call where Natan Sharansky was doing a webinar or a conversation with the camps that are hosting Israeli shlichim from the Jewish Agency. And his title was Staying Positive in Solitude. And he talked a lot about the need to stay connected, even if you're at home and isolated. And I think what camps do better than most is create community. And they're doing that virtually right now in powerful, powerful ways. I was on for a few minutes last evening on a cooking class where it was Chef Shauna from Israel projecting into Camp Ramah in Canada. The number of camps that are running Havdalah ceremonies and services, and they're getting huge turnouts. You're talking numbers. Tamarack camps this past weekend had 700 people at their Havdalah ceremony.
Wow.
So it's really, really incredible. The final piece, we have a site on Facebook, Jewish Camp at Home, where camps are doing programming. And for the last 3 weeks, it's 20,000 minutes of programming already that's been put out. So I know that we're just getting started. And I think it's proof that camp is far beyond the summer. Camp is a year-round and lifelong experience, and that community stays with you for that time.
It's such a good point, Jeremy. And I do think what's been so interesting to me about the last few weeks is the way the Jewish world has sort of flattened. And so many of us are doing similar kinds of things to build community in the gaps of those physical gatherings. David and Meredith, I know you are both really fully engaged in that process. We'll start with David to tell us a little. I feel like there's 2 big questions for you, David. I mean, one is, how are the schools and the teachers really adapting right now to kind of help us through this time where parenting and schooling are kind of more intermingled than they have normally? And also to talk about what you think are the real challenges that particularly the economic, both the disruption from the health crisis and then the longer term economic effects are going to have on our schools. You can start with either one.
Jody, thanks so much, and thanks to the Forward for hosting us today. Look, your question is embedded on so many different levels, and I just want to say that the educators out there, and in my case, the Jewish educators specifically, are doing absolutely heroic work, being able to transform everything they do in just a couple of days' notice and be able to provide quality educational and engagement experiences for our kids is really, really something that should be admired. They weren't trained for this. None of us were. Maybe that will be one of the changes that occurs after all of this is over in how we actually adapt to the new technologies that are around us. But for now, it was really people pivoting on a moment's notice, and they did so so admirably. I would also say, in order to be a good educator, you need to be an optimist. And it's not just an optimist about what the future will hold, it's an optimist to believe that what you do in the world actually makes a positive difference. And in that regard, that's when we all just need to understand that our people are trained as educators to transmit knowledge, but more than that, they are engaged in a business of actually developing the future generation, or the generation today, to be the future of tomorrow. And that has to be filled with a complete optimism. I think as long as we believe that that is the true mission of education, more than the knowledge, more than the content, it's about connection, relationships, making sure they have a sense of belonging and identity, then I think Jewish education is in good hands. So our Hebrew schools are trying to provide opportunities for people to be engaged in meaningful Jewish cultural, religious experiences. I was on a panel with some teenagers the other day who were telling me they have been to more synagogue services in the last 3 weeks than they have been in such a longer period in their life, which is just an amazing tribute to all of the educators and rabbis out there who are managing to engage them. Look, the immediate situation is one where we're actually still really in reactionary mode. The longer term impact, the economic impact of all of this is yet to be felt and yet to be fully known. There are going to be lots of layoffs in the nonprofit sector, which is going to affect all of our programming. But I caution everybody, especially on the issue of day school tuition or camp tuition, whatever it might be. This crisis that we're going through now shouldn't disguise the underlying problem that Jewish education and experience is too expensive as it is. This will exacerbate the problem. But our total proposition has to be the value of what we are offering is worth that which parents and that which families and that which the Federation and that which the foundation world is willing to support. So yes, it's going to be tough, but we've gone through some tough economic situations before. We will come out on top if we believe that the value proposition of what we're offering is good for our young people and their families. We have to believe that, partly because we've got no other alternative, and partly because it's the truth of our own experience. And we know that this has been the case before, and will probably be the case again.
You know, Dave, I think what you said is so important, because I feel like the through line for me of what this whole thing is about is I feel like it is forcing all of us to really focus on what is the essence of whatever it is we're doing. And that's true in our professional lives. I think it's true in our family lives. It's true. What do we really need? I mean, this is stripping away a lot of the structure we have built up. And I think it's, you know, everybody who's running an organization or a business is trying to think of like, what can I live without? What can't I live without? What is our essential product? And I was going to go to Meredith next, but if you'll forgive me, Meredith, I'm going to turn to our teenager, which we actually probably should have started with, because one of the ways that Meira has experienced this challenge of understanding, well, what's the essence, was about her bat mitzvah. And I want her to talk a little bit about, as I said, her bat mitzvah was scheduled for March 14th. She was all ready to go. It had been postponed from the week before because she's she's a competitive dancer, and she had a concert or performance or whatever the week before, so it had to be postponed. She probably would have had it if it was on March 7th. And as she and her family made the decision to not have the bat mitzvah they planned, she had an idea of, she said, she told her family, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna do the whole service from my bed by myself. But that's not exactly what happened. So I want Meira to tell us now about her thought process about why that was what she wanted and what happened on the day of May 14th. And also maybe a little bit about how you've been thinking about it in the couple weeks that have passed since then.
Yeah, thank you. So my bat mitzvah was scheduled for March 14th and it was canceled. or postponed till November. And I was suspecting that it would be canceled, one, for everybody's safety, and two, just for the greater health. Because to my family, and a lot of what my mom has been talking about, it's not just us, that it's everybody else, that if you're hanging out with your friends and then they go home and their grandparent lives with them and they're in their 80s and they're higher risk, and then they get sick, and then the rest of the families can get sick. So it's just a cycle. And I guess my situation relates a lot to one of the questions, which was from Amy. And like, I don't know how to phrase, but for me, I have a lot of family, close family, that would be coming to Seattle for my bat mitzvah, who are higher risk. And so for me, it was more about, I don't want them to be at risk for something I have. And I'm technically a bat mitzvah because I turned 13, but I really wanted to have this big service and then this big celebration. But I had spent the past 7 months learning and finding all the prayers, and then learning a Torah portion and writing my Devar. And so I decided that I don't care if I can't have bat mitzvah. I don't really want to have a Zoom bat mitzvah. I'm just gonna wake up and sit in my bed and do my bat mitzvah. So of course I did that. And the first couple words of the first prayer, I was bawling my eyes out, but I did it. And then I felt proud of myself because I learned it and I proved myself that I could do it.
But then you said you invited your mom in or something, right? What happened next?
Yeah. So my mom heard me and she came in, and my brother, my dad, and my mom had all learned a Torah portion to read at my bat mitzvah. And so my mom came in and we did the whole service, and it was really meaningful to me because it's not, as you said about like the essence, it's not about having this big party. It's about you're becoming a Jewish adult, and you're entering this new phase in your life where you can take more responsibility, and you can become a person that's a larger help in the Jewish community, which I thought was very important to me.
Great. And one more question for you, Mayor, before we turn to Meredith. I promise we're getting there. Which is, as you start to think, and maybe it's too early to even ask you this, but as you start to think about planning your November bat mitzvah, how do you think it's going to be different because of this experience and because of having canceled or postponed or whatever, March 14th?
Well, Seattle is a little bit ahead of everybody else because we got hit harder, as in the United States. And I think that it's going to be a bigger, we're having this big party, and I think everybody's going to be more excited for this big party because they can travel across the country and then have this big party where they can see all their family that they were worried about for the past 8-9 months. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to. And I'm also looking forward to, now that I have this time, I spent 6 or 7 months preparing for my bat mitzvah. I now have 8 months left preparing, so I can use that time, because I have all the prayers mastered. I can use that time to learn like a second Torah portion, because I have to learn a new one, and then I can learn a second one, and then I can make my Devar much better because I have this time, and I don't know what my Torah portion is about yet, but I can use it to shape and give a little reference.
Yeah, and then your synagogue Kavanah will be so happy that you can lane 2 portions every year, because you'll know, you'll be such an expert. Meredith, I feel it's great to hear so much positive stuff that everybody, Jeremy and David especially, talked about, like the programming and the way teachers and camp leaders are sort of adapting. But I want to get real a little bit too, and hear from you a little bit about some of what you're seeing from families that people are really struggling with, because And I think it's on a bunch of different levels. It's some of what, how do we like literally deal with the boundaries when, now that there are no boundaries between work and family? How do we, like, for many of us, it's the first time we've seen our kids this much. And there are real gaps in what the schools are offering. I mean, it's many fewer hours than a school was, plus activities. And also dealing with kids who are, cycling between like, this is so cool, I get to play video games all the time, for like, I am totally afraid that everyone's gonna get coronavirus and we're never gonna. So tell me, let's get real a little bit and tell me what you're hearing and what people are really struggling with.
So we have to remember what parenting looked like before this. We were already living in a generation where parents were parenting with the most anxiety we've ever seen, both of parents and children. The world was going to end because of the climate crisis. It still probably, I think, might, kids were asking us, why do I have to do my homework and go to college if the climate crisis is destroy us in 5 years? We had this election, like everything felt very hopeless. And many of the parents that we all work with were dealing with extreme work-life balance challenges, needing to be dual income families in order to just make ends meet, and felt the financial struggle to pay for things like camp and days. I mean, like that's where we were. None of that went away. On the shoulders of that, we added parents saying, now I have to work and parent and teach third grade math and do the laundry and clean and try to grocery shop in a weird way. And I can't count on Peapod because they're not going to show up on time. And I can't just go take a walk to clear my head because I can't just go take a walk. And so I think that parents' anxiety is rising, their children's anxiety is rising as well. And even as I think the mental health community has stepped up and there are many more online options, we still have stigma around people saying, I need help, I need to connect with someone. I would say on top of all of that, one of the things that we have been noticing is still some gender imbalances. We see reports that show that frequently female identified partners tend to carry more of the weight of household responsibilities. And so while we do see that now with all parents home, there can be an equal balance of that, I do worry about female identified parents who tend to be the social schedules, the manager of schools, the manager of the households, because all of that has become more difficult. And so what does that mean? And some of the long-term effects on that, I think, are really challenging. For the most part, I think that most parents feel disappointed in themselves. They had ambitions when we first heard school was going to be canceled. Great, I'll do a schedule and I'll do this and that. And there is that height, and then like it comes crashing down. And this is not something that's going on for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We're looking at longer term physical distancing, certainly in some, if not many or all of our communities. And so how do we get parents back up from that very low point, back into a place that's manageable, that they can sustain this for quite a while?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to the panel before we started publicly that I mean, there's also silver linings in that, which is that, a lot of us are spending more time with our kids than we were. And I had been feeling myself really pulled because I'm so aware of saying, no, I can't play with you now. No, I don't have time. I'm in a meeting. I'm in a Zoom. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But a couple of days ago, when we were at the dinner table sharing how we were feeling about the quarantine, both my son and daughter really gave me all this great feedback about all the time they're spending with me, and how much they love playing ping pong with me and having dinner together. It of course made me feel bad for all the time I don't spend with them when I'm in my normal life. It felt like, why are they so happy about such a little amount? But I'm trying to tell myself, no, even that is good. So I guess that's the other question for you, Meredith, really is, so what, right, the first few days it was like this idealized thing of the schedule, and there's going to be group family calisthenics and everyone's going to do more chores and we're going to limit our screen time. What's like the week 3, week 4 tips you have for parents about how to both kind of get through it and make it meaningful and not hate yourself too much?
So absolutely. I think one of the things that you highlighted, which is so important, is that as parents, our feelings and our emotions and our worries are not the same as our children. And the more time that we spend with our children, they're not having their peer groups and we're not having our peer groups. So it's important for us not to project the exact same worries and fears on our kids. We need to meet our kids where they are, developmentally appropriate. Certainly the older the kids are, the more you can probably have some very honest conversations with them. But even with teenagers, I think it's really important to understand that when the absence of their peer group, you are not their peer, you're still their parent. And that's a really important role. That being said, and I think for many of the people that we work with, our kids will be fine. They don't need to do that math worksheet. You can go take a hike if you're in a place where you can. If there's laundry on the couch, no one's coming over. That's okay. You just hide it for the Zoom call and bring it back. Like, be forgiving of yourselves. You need to sleep, you need to eat, you need to listen to your emotions. Like, that is what it comes down to. And I will say that now into week 3, week 6 for some of our friends in the New York area of where they are, what feels very important is that there are going to be more difficult conversations to have. There are going to be conversations about money and lack of money in certain families where there previously was. There are going to be conversations about death that are unlike conversations we've ever had before. So much of what we know in the Jewish community of coming together mourning wise is just not possible. And there are going to be like big challenges around society. And so I would say, like, let's put on our trauma-informed hats about how we speak to our kids. Answer your questions honestly, answer their questions honestly, but you don't have to tell them everything you know. Be in tune with their emotions and give them that time. They need a little extra hug. They need to sit on your lap during a Zoom call. They need space to be in their room. Let them have that. Those are the most important things. All of the academic pressures and the great content that's online and all of that, if you have the space for it, it's great. If you don't, it's perfectly fine too.
I would like to say, like, I'm not, that was so great, Meredith. Thank you for giving us permission on that stuff. And I want to say that I think one of the things you said about we don't have our peer groups is really important. I know I had a Zoom coffee with 5 other working mom friends this weekend. And I think it took us a while to say, like, oh, we're so busy trying to figure out what are we going to do for work in this new environment? How are we going to parent in this new environment? We forget to recreate the social spaces that are our own outlets, we're worried about our parents and our family connections and what are we going to do for the Seder. And I think it's important to also remember, like, whatever it was that sustained you in real life, like, you need to find a way in regular life, you need to find a way on that. I'm gonna turn back to Meira because we already have a couple of questions for you. One is actually from a woman I know, Amy Bass, a friend and journalist who lives in New Rochelle and wrote a piece for The Forward about being at that kind of early, what's that called? Tip of the spear in New York. She says, my daughter Hannah is so reluctant to let us postpone her bat mitzvah because May still seems so far away. How can we help her balance her own disappointment and all of the things being canceled that she's worked so hard for, like a violin audition, camp, school, theater, etc., and understand better the bigger picture that we are trying to create for the public good? And we also had a question, I'm now losing it, but it was very directly for Meira asking about why she didn't want to do the Zoom mitzvah. I think it was from an educator who said they'd been hosting a bunch of the Zoom mitzvahs and they seem to be, going well. So I wonder, we'll start with Meira to address maybe both those questions, and then I'm sure the other panelists would jump in on what to say to Amy, how Amy should frame it for her daughter.
Yeah, so I sent a little response to Denise, who sent the
Meira is way ahead of us on how to use Zoom. So she's already,
who sent the Zoom question, and I phrased it. Let's see. I phrased it as it's not. Let's see. I said, well, for me, it's not technically about speaking about a bat mitzvah because it's not Jewish adults in the room, but mostly I didn't want to do it because I wanted to have this one big moment in my life. And it was more meaningful for me to have it as one big thing. And I think Amy's daughter and I are in a very similar situation. And I don't know if a lot of other families have this, but as I said earlier, I would rather have everybody stay safe because there are people in my larger family who work in healthcare. And so if they come and they end up having coronavirus, then 200 other people are infected, which just carries this cycle. So that was one of the most important things for me. And yeah, I just wanted to have this one big moment instead of having two big moments. And it doesn't technically count as a bat mitzvah, but I think a lot of other people are having Zoom bat mitzvahs, and it's impressive, honestly.
Let's zoom out to the other part of the Amy's question though too, which is I think it's like, so I mean, to cancel a bat mitzvah is a big decision, although the payoff of canceling it to get a better one later, but it's like, how do we talk to when so much is getting canceled, so much disappointment? How do we just like help our kids through that, right? In terms of each thing.
Yeah.
It's not even just our kids. I mean, it's all of us. We 2.5 weeks ago, we were running an 800-person conference, our biennial leaders assembly, and we had to cancel 6 days in advance. For 2 days later, we had put together a virtual panel, and the positive feeling of being together, even if it was virtually, was so powerful. So I mean, I know it's on all the levels, but I just want to make that point. Like, we're all feeling it right now, that need to make up for things that we've lost.
Yeah.
Can I just add in though that firstly, there's not one size fits all, and everyone's going to respond differently. This generation of teenagers, Gen Z, some of the phrases which capture their lives are that of FOMO and YOLO, right? The fear of missing out, and you only live once. These generation, they're going to be missing graduation ceremonies, bar and bat mitzvah ceremonies. I heard some people talking about their end of year dance they were so worried about missing. That shouldn't be minimized. These are major, major milestones of passage that we as a society have determined are really important. And people should feel upset because this is just not something that anybody expected or planned for. And the last thing you want to tell a teenager is something like, when you grow up, you're going to look back upon this experience and it was all character building, or you'll put it all into perspective. When I was young, you should have seen what I did for my graduation. What you're doing now online is that's not what you want to tell a young person. But what I do want to say, and this relates to some of the questions coming through, this generation of young people are really, really smart. And they were in some ways born for this technology age that all of us adults are now grappling with. They know how to do a lot of this stuff more efficiently, more effectively than all of us. We should be taking this time and opportunity to honor and to learn from all of them, and make these decisions together with your children. If we truly believe as a community the bar and bat mitzvah is the time when you come of age, then surely it is a time when you should be making these decisions together with those children, and even younger people. Meredith can attest to, our young kids have a lot of understanding and agency. We as a society don't give them enough credit. Now is the time to really get back in touch with what it really means to be a young person in the world today.
Thank you, David. And I hope, Jamie Bedrin, that answers your question. I happen to know Jamie. She's a neighbor of mine in Montclair, and her kids are younger. And I think she asked the question, why are parents giving kids the choice to cancel? Shouldn't it be a parental decision? But I think you're right that in this moment, that's it's part of the coming of age. It doesn't, also, when you engage your kids in that decision, it doesn't really mean that they have the power to make the decision. I mean, I've been telling my kids, they get to be, they don't get to make the decision about the caterer, but I'm happy to take their input, and also like lots of more substantive things about their B'nai Mitzvah, which lucky for me is November 21st. So we're pretty confident we'll be able to hold it. But I want to, it's interesting what you said, David, about this generation, because one of the things I've been noticing, so we've, I think, written a lot about, and everybody sort of knows that there's lots of ways in which this Gen Z generation is taking such impressive leadership on climate change, and Meira has actually been engaged in that fight as well. And I feel like I'm seeing lots of examples in which the kids, the Z generation, like really gets this flattening the curve and the kind of personal responsibility for fighting the virus in a way that's related to that climate change movement of, taking responsibility for the future. And it's really impressive.
Yeah. Just say this
Sorry,
juxtaposition. Sorry, the juxtaposition of this selfie generation or this I generation that care so much about themselves and their desire to fix the world that we have so screwed up for them is something which they can live with and understand. And maybe we don't understand those parallel universes. It's not just climate change. It's gun control. It's equality for all. It's fairness. It's diversity. We're seeing young people mobilize like in numbers, like we've never seen before. And they also care about themselves, and they can do both beautifully, and we shouldn't underestimate them. I mean, the one thing they are not just our hope for today, they're our hope for tomorrow. Like, don't underestimate the power of these young people to really make this world a better place.
So we do have a few Tachlis questions, which I want to make sure we address, because although the motto of "Don't worry about the couch, the laundry on the couch, nobody's coming over" is a really good takeaway from this panel, Meredith, I want to also make sure people get their questions answered. So Ella has her wonky question: what about camp insurance? If camp gets canceled, will we get our money refunded, or with or without insurance? And I think that's kind of the big question of, if camp gets canceled, what happens both to the money we invested, but also then to the camps? Like, if they give back all of our money, how's that going to work?
So it's a huge issue, difficult and really big. 150 overnight camps, 160 overnight camps. The fixed costs that they have on an annual basis, that's salaries, benefits, the office, maintenance, insurance, etc. It's a huge number. And it's covered by the tuition that gets paid. I think we're telling camps have to make their own decisions. Our advice is, you're in a relationship with a consumer forever. Camp is year-round and lifelong. I think refunding tuition is the right initial decision. Now, you can ask if somebody wants to donate some of it, because the camp is now going to have a major hurdle. Maybe you put the money down for if we lose first session, but it's a save a spot for second session of this summer or for 2021. But the number, philanthropy is going to play a key role in grants. We're looking at loans, big amount of loans, either federal Small Business Administration loans or private philanthropic loans. And the camps are making tough choices about where they have to reduce costs.
Jeremy, let me pick up on what you said about second session, because I got this question earlier from a friend today. Yeah. So if I was signed up for first set, like let's say we have to cancel first session but not second session, do you think camps will try to increase their capacity for second session? Should we sign up for second session right now as a backup plan?
I wouldn't necessarily make any changes right now, but I assure you that camps are looking very flexibly and nimbly and saying, look, how much longer could we go in August? Could we extend for another week or two? Could you make shorter sessions potentially, and then double up and have a first session attend for 2 weeks, and in July or late July, August, and then maybe a shorter second session is 2 weeks in August. There's lots of ways at this. Everybody will approach it differently. And I think there's a realization about the need to be together. And we'll talk more, I'm sure, about the connection, but we don't want to lose the entire summer. It may be different from what had been planned, but if there's any way that people can spend some time together, and it's for the benefit of the parents, the campers, the counselors, the professionals, everybody will benefit by having at least something.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a situation where everybody's interest is aligned, which is everybody wants there to be camp. We have a question about Israel trips, which we don't really have anyone particularly who works on Israel trips. Although Jeremy, you have one kid who came home from an Israel trip, one who's still there, and I think David, you are engaged with some of the Israel programs. So if you guys want to talk about what we know about Israel trips, both gap years that have gotten disrupted and summer trips that are planned, what do we know?
David, you want to go?
Yeah, look, the situation with Israel trips for the summer is a bit unknown, and people are going to hold off making a decision for as long as they possibly can. What's probably going to force people's hands in the case of international travel is going to be when the airlines start needing down payments and further payments, at which point organizations will need to take the stand as to whether they want to pay that and take the gambit or not. We believe that that'll come around the beginning of May, where most of the airlines will push that. That being said, airlines and hotels might be a bit more forgiving in those circumstances. If the situation in America and Israel doesn't change between now and then the answer is made for us. Things will change. We just don't know how quickly. And we also don't know about parents, how much time are parents going to need before they feel safe sending their kids into other environments with other kids? If the children get to have a month of school before the summer, then I think it'd be much easier for us to say, let's run the summer camps and the Israel trips. If there is no school, which is a real possibility, if the academic semester is now officially over, which some people in some states are already presuming, then it's going to be a lot harder to convince parents that there's not one kid that might come onto a camp or an Israel trip who might infect the rest of that environment. So there are too many unknowns right now. I think Jewish communal professionals in general are waiting for Pesach and the Pesach break, A, just to breathe, and B, realizing that after Pesach, a lot more tougher decisions are going to be made. At this stage, I only know of one international program which is officially cancelled, but all overseas summer programs are still slated to be going. That might be optimistic and naive, or it might be realistic. We don't know at this stage.
Meredith, picking up on what David just said, and I know I'm jumping around here, but about Pesach, what are you talking to parents about for resources for this Pesach? We are either have just published or about to publish a sort of guide to hosting or participating in an online Seder, but I wonder how you're thinking about this as a person who's really focused on parenting and kids.
Yeah, look, Passover is the most widely celebrated holiday in the North American Jewish community. And so many of us were already producing resources, and now we have literally had to train ourselves not to use the word host, but have a Seder, because no one's hosting a Seder. For the love of God, don't host anyone in your house. And so, I mean, PJ Library, we have at pjlibrary.org/Passover, we have a downloadable family-friendly Haggadah. We have tips to do a Zoom Seder. We have YouTube videos. If you just want to watch someone else do a Seder, it's too much to do it for yourself. But I will say is that the original Passover happened in individual people's homes. We were in Egypt, and we were getting ready to leave and to cross the Red Sea. And we sat as individual, immediately family units. And we had the shank bone, our bread was about to rise. That's what it looked like. And so this is a year when you don't have other relatives, in-laws or not, that might make you conform to do a Seder the way that they do it. So get a pop-up tent. If you have a kid's tunnel, sit with your pillows on the floor, right? Like if you have a fire pit or grill, go make your own matzah, take it back to Egypt, do something that is really friendly, particular for those little kids. Someone had asked a question, what do you hope kids are going to remember? I do hope that they remember more of the intimate family experiences. And I think this is a chance to make it interactive, and there's no bad Seder, right? Like our only mitzvah is to eat matzah. Right? I mean, there are some other ones, but that's our core one. That's what you can focus on. Most of us have flour and water if we can't even get a hold of matzah. Jody, you spoke at the very beginning about going back to the essence. Matzah is the essence. It's a bread that's not puffed up. It has no extras. Like this is the time to celebrate what we do have, our freedom, our ability to make some decisions. We don't have freedom of movement fully. It puts things into perspective, but let's get back to the essence. And that's what I would say to families, particularly with the younger kids. Focus on what their needs are. Have them experience what it felt like to be in Egypt. That's what they're going to remember.
I love that. And I just shared your how to make your own matzah resource in the chat. Meira, how does that sound to you? Like when you're a 13-year-old, I think you're the youngest in your family, so you probably asked the 4 questions. I don't know the Passover is my daughter's favorite holiday. I don't know if it's yours, but what are you thinking about as you approach the Seder? Are you excited for this Passover? Are you mourning the loss of something, or how are you thinking about it?
Yeah. my mom, as she's working through this because she works with Jewish communication, they're building an online like Seder website, so you can have these Zoom calls with all of your family where you want to do Passover Seder. And when you normally in the past years, you can't have people if from across the country come to your house and be in your Seders. Now you can. So there's some upsides and there's also some downsides. But
I want to hear about it from your 13-year-old brain.
yeah.
What's your favorite part of the Seder or of Passover normally? And what are you thinking about that this year?
I think it's about like maybe this is the plague, because we're talking about all these plagues and coronavirus. Maybe now you're substituting a plague or you're adding one on because that's going to be creative and you're going to add something to make your Seder better. And just like Meredith said, you're not hosting one like everybody's hosting one, and you're social distance gathering, and that this is definitely different, but there is some similarities to our ancestors when Passover was first like created, because you had to do something. It was an emergency, and right now we're in this worldwide pandemic that a lot of people are dying from, and that it's still getting better. So.
Thanks. I'm going to go back to Tachlis for one more sec because Sarah Bernstein wants to just clarify, and I'm sure other people on the call do too. Will Jewish camps state to state decide? Is it like I think, Jeremy, you said that every camp will make its own decision.
Yeah,
there'll be some guidance from the association.
Yeah, there really many decisions will be made based on the health departments or the state by state level. And, New York could make a decision, and right across the river, Pennsylvania could be having different set of rules. So that's why, it's still uncertain. But I think in general, camps are really taking all of this, the health guidelines, very seriously. They're working with medical committees that each camp has, and then resources that the movements have and that we're providing. So there's a lot of data. But they're also going to work closely with the local health authorities.
So we have a couple questions here. One from Nicole Robbins. I think we just answered your question, Nicole, about how to think about Pesach, but Nicole is also asking how to think about this for people with younger children, probably Meredith, and I don't know, maybe all of you have expertise, but for kids under 5, how do we think about this? How do you minimize the trauma? And then Amy Friedman asked a sort of different question on the other end of the spectrum, which is, given what David said earlier about mourning the loss of some of these rituals like B'nai Mitzvah or graduation ceremonies as we expected, what do we do? We know we shouldn't just try to pretend that didn't happen or replace them, but maybe there's something else we could build to create other rites of passage. Any ideas on that?
I would say for like parents of very young children, be forgiving of yourself and go back to some of the advice that you got when you had a newborn. Sleep when your kids sleep. You're on when your kids are up. And so what do you need to do to keep yourself in it? The other advice that I give to particularly young children is that they understand a lot more than we always think they do. So please minimize your conversations about what's going on in the world when you're watching news. Screens are great. There was an article recently in the Washington Post that in the battle of screens won. We've all given up as parents. It's okay for your kids to watch TV. We all watched TV growing up. We're pretty, pretty okay. But try not to have the news on, even things like the radio, things that your kids will be listening to. There are resources out there, and I'm sure we can share some of them. There is a great book about how to talk to coronavirus for very young children put out by a group of Jewish educators. So use the material that's geared towards them, that's not appropriate for them to have those conversations. But if they ask questions, answers like, some people will get sick, particularly those that were already sick, and some people may die. But not everyone's going to, and not no one's going to. Like really being honest at an age appropriate level, and being able to be prepared. You're going to have more difficult conversations than I think you ever thought you would. So think about your answers to some of these types of questions. Will we get sick? What about our family members? Understand what your kid might ask, and it's okay to practice answering those questions to yourself so that when your kid answers them, you're not blindsided. You feel like at least you've prepped a little bit.
What about the rites of passage? Can we create some kind of new rites of passage for teenagers?
Look, we already are, and they have been for years. Their creativity is doing this in real time anyway. I think now is the time for us to understand more fully that Jewish education, Jewish life has always been an evolving tradition and an evolving religion. And this time is going to bring out some of the best and the worst, but it's going to bring out the most creative ways of how we've ever approached adversity before. One of the questions for all of us is to consider is what's going to be different as a result of all of this. I would say that if we come out of this unchanged, then we have really failed the test. The test is going to be, and I say this to my staff and to our supporters all the time, it's not what we do in the reactive moment, but it's how we respond to all of this long term that's really going to define us. I just want to take the point to say that there's something about Jewish education and all of this, which has also been a bit humbling for me as well. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like what do families really need now? And to answer some of your questions, they need health, they need protection, they need income, they need welfare. For some families out there, I get it. Jewish education right now is going to be a bit of a luxury. Like if you need to dial back on the expectations of what your kid is learning in Hebrew school or in some day school subjects, I'm all right with that. But the other thing which we all need to know is when this thing is over, and for sure it's going to be over, that the community is then going to turn to Jewish educational institutions like PJ and like summer camps and like Hebrew school and day schools to revitalize and bring back the Jewish community to a stronger version of itself. And that's really important. So I really don't care what type of Pesach Seder any family does. Don't be hard on yourself. Do what feels right for you, but don't give up on it either. Because your kid will remember that more than anything else. And you should do something to mark it as a family like you should do with all of these milestone events. Come up with your own ritual now. That's going to be a much more enduring lesson that they will take with them than what they're dealing with in the immediacy of today.
So that sort of begins to answer this question that Ella has put in the chat here, which says, what advice do you have for my 10 and 12-year-old kids who view this time as the worst vacation we've ever been on and are totally unmotivated to do any distance learning or personal growth learning and just want to watch Disney Plus all day? They're not seeing this spending time as a family moment as the silver lining.
Can I add in?
Sorry?
Can I add in on something?
Yes, please, Mira, jump in.
The ages are a little different, but I think my family, we often have family dinners. They don't last long because not everybody wants to sit for a while. And I think, at least for me, this shows me that there's not your family time's not going to be forever, because you're seeing people that are getting sick from coronavirus, and that you never know when something's going to hit, and that 3 out of the 4 people in your family could have coronavirus and no symptoms. So you have to think about the wider spectrum. But I think you can also add in, this is something my families are doing, you can add in fun things. I love cooking. It's one of my biggest passions. And so I've used this time to grow on those skills. And so in the past couple weeks, I've made a whole Mediterranean night, and I've made challah, and I've made these big breakfasts. And so there's so much more I can do. And just back to the Seder stuff and what David was saying a while ago, my Hebrew school, because it's very small, we're doing online Zoom things 2 or 3 times a week. So it's not the most important for an education to pursue me in life, but I'm still getting that Jewish social net. And so I'm still keeping those things. And it's a lot of people that I would meet at a Jewish summer camp. So I'm having my 2 hours a couple of nights a week where we're just talking and we're hanging out and we're discussing some fun online Pesach things that we can do.
Great.
Italian.
So we are actually almost out of time, which sort of snuck up on me. I apologize for that. We're gonna have one last round for everybody, and I would just love to kind of make this almost like a share where each of us just talks about one thing, that one family moment, parenting moment, experience, anecdote from the quarantine period that you want to share. Probably a positive one, but it's up to you. Before we turn to that, I just want to thank again all of the attendees for coming, and to let you know that we are giving everybody who signed up for the Zoom a 1-month free subscription to the Forward. Also, all of our coronavirus coverage is available free to the public. Please read, please share with your networks, and please come back and join us for another Zoom versation. I'm working on Zoominar, Zoom versation. I don't know. We on Monday afternoon, we are going to have a discussion about called The Plague of Our Own. We published a couple days ago, not last week, 20 essays by 20 leading thinkers and intellectuals on the plagues in this moment of plague. And I've got about 5 or 6 of them who are going to join me for a conversation about that to kind of inspire us all for the Seder. And then on the 14th, we're going to be doing a program focused sort of on Matritim about really focusing on the hands-on helpers in our community, and what are ways that people can get involved or support people who are actually supporting the most vulnerable among us. But before you sign off, let's just give everyone a last word. Everybody, one thing to share about you with your parents or kids. Start with you, David.
Well, I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old, and they both declared last weekend as our worst ever family weekend experience, to which my wife and I agreed, which means it's only uphill from here. And put it in perspective, like, it sucks sometimes, and we're doing the best we can, and we're in this together. And we've had more family dinners and played more soccer in the back than we have in the past. So stay positive, everybody. This thing will eventually end. The hurt in the meantime is going to be hard, but we'll come out of this stronger on the other side.
Meredith?
We're diving into a literary classic by Lewis Sacker, Wayside School, a school that was built not 30 classrooms long and 1 story high, but 30 stories high, 1 classroom on each. And it's a series of books. There's actually a brand new 4th one out, where nothing is right, everything is backwards, and yet the children learn, they have a good time. And so we are throwing ourselves into a world where nothing is right, everything is sideways and upside down, and yet they survive and we laugh.
Jeremy?
For me, I would say this is a marathon, not a sprint, and we're going to be. It's already feels like it's been a long time, and it's going to keep going. And I think for all of us, each for the kids, for my wife and myself, we've got to find a way to find a connection that may not be social. We're distant socially, but we can still find spiritual connections. I've really enjoyed the singing, that's the concerts that have been virtual online. For me, that's been really restorative.
Mayor, you told us about cooking. What's one other thing you have been doing with your parents that is working for you?
I think just using this time, because in August and September, when things start to progress for most states going back to normal, kids are going to be hanging out with their friends, or they're going to have these after school commitments where you can't have this time. So when you're stressed, you're still in this time, and you can use your time to have more family conversation.
Thanks. And thank you all for joining me. I'll just share that we had a really great time last week. My husband and son picked ingredients, like we were on the Chopped cooking show, and then my daughter and I had a cook-off with them, and the second round is tonight. I believe one of the secret ingredients we sort of already know is turkey jerky. So if you have ideas for what I should make with turkey jerky, please send them my way. And thank you again for joining us. We hope to see you back on Zoom soon and in real life. Maybe not soon, but eventually. Thanks again to David, Meredith, Jeremy, and Meira. Chag Sameach, and see you soon.
Thanks,
Oh,
everybody.
one more thing. Don't leave me. Thanks also so much to Lisa Lepson and Dina Cooperman and everyone at the Forward who helped put this together. It's a lot of work, and we hope you will share the video with your networks. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.